particular war is concerned, we're now learning that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has issued a statement over Russia's recent strikes on a Ukrainian thermal plant that killed 3 and injured 1 in the eastern city of Sloviansk. President Zelenskyy has described the attacks in the Donetsk region as strictly terror. He stated that the primary target of the overnight Russian drone and missile attacks was energy infrastructure. In recent months, Russia has consistently targeted Ukrainian energy grids, and these attacks have left hundreds of people without power in several regions. Ukraine has done so as well, targeting key Russian oil refineries in its territory as well. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has meanwhile stated that energy workers have been working extensively from Zaporizhia and Mykolaiv region to Vinnytsia. However, while conveying his condolences for the victims, Zelenskyy has called on world leaders to respond against Russia. Listen in to what he had to say.
Зараз, кілька годин тому, був удар по Слов'янській ТЕС, удар російських бомб. На жаль, 2 людини загинули. Мої співчуття. Є поранені. І це виключно терор. Нормальні так не воюють, і на таку російську війну повинна бути належна реакція світу.
President Zelenskyy has also stated that the strikes were complex and difficult to counter and reported the use of more than 600 drones, including 400 Shaheeds. He added that 2/3 of the missiles were shot down, while a few managed to hit their targets. He's also raised the issue of Russian oil exports, calling them the basis of what he claims is Russian arrogance. He noted that India and China are to reduce imports of Russian oil in order to make sure that the war ends. However, his statement on extensive use of Shahed drones by Russia indicates deeper Russia-Iran defense cooperation. Listen in to what Zelenskyy has said.
Удар був складний, комбінований, спеціально прорахований, що було важко протидіяти. Були і ракети, включно з балістикою та аеробалістичними, 52 ракети загалом. Більше 600 ударних дронів, із них шахеди близько 400. Більшість дронів знешкодили, 2/3 ракет теж збито.
Stay with us on the broadcast is Mr. Gilbert. Dr. Rao, interesting statement coming in from Zelenskyy. He's in fact noted that several of these drones are the Shahed drones, the HESA Shahed 136 drones, also known as Jaran 2 in Russia. These are Iranian-designed loitering munitions that Iran has been providing to Russia for quite a while as far as this war is concerned. But I wanted to understand from you, as far as the Iran-Russia equation is concerned, how long do you think Iran can continue its supply, considering its own stockpiles have been depleted ever since its war with Israel?
It's not clear how many of these drones are actually coming from Iran. As you mentioned, Iran helped the Russians to set up a manufacturing facility inside Russia. And so I assume that most, if not all, of the drones that are in discussion are coming from within Russia, not being exported by Iran. But this is a distraction. What we are overlooking, and intentionally overlooking because of the way Mr. Zelenskyy conducts his statements to the world press, is that the Russians at any time can do something that they have not yet done, and which will change the war dramatically. They can call it, they can declare war on Kiev. This still remains, formally speaking, a limited operation that's called a special military operation. It is not all-out war. In all-out war conditions, Russia will level Kiev to the ground, and it can do it in a few days, and it may end up doing it. So we are just witnessing now a lot of firing back and forth between the Russians and the Ukrainians trying to destroy energy infrastructure of the other side. The Ukrainians have been rather successful in making important strikes and damaging a fairly large proportion, 20-30% of Russian refinery capacity. That is a big deal. And they're doing it with their own drones, since they don't have missiles, but they're doing it very effectively. So these exchanges by Russia to Ukraine, by Ukraine to Russia, of attacks on infrastructure are continuing, but they do not yet constitute a full-blown war. In full-blown war, nobody from the EU will dare set foot in Ukraine. This diplomatic tourism that's been going on, as if Ukraine is a normal place, it isn't. At any moment, the city can be destroyed by the Russians. So let's keep that in mind.
Indeed, and I also wanted to digress a little bit and rake up the United States' recent decision to resume nuclear testing. Now, the US has not ratified the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty that was brought about in 1996. Donald Trump has stated that it's an important national security decision to resume these tests after a pause of 33 years. We've seen a reaction from Iran. Iran has called this regressive, irresponsible. Russia too has reacted, stating that Trump has pointed out to some recent tests that Russia has carried out, and Russia hopes that Trump has not referred to the Burevestnik tests because this missile does not fall under the category of nuclear weapons tests restricted by international treaties. All in all, I wanted to understand from you, what do you make of Trump's recent decision? What sort of signal is he trying to send? Is this mere posturing?
It was posturing. It was disinformation. The reality is the Russians have not tested any bombs.
Yes.
And he was speaking about bombs. But the United States is going to start testing again our bombs. The Russians have, in the last week, tested 2 nuclear engine-powered delivery systems for bombs. One of them is a drone submarine, and the other, it's called Poseidon, and the other is the Burevestnik, which is a nuclear-powered cruise missile. It is a cruise missile, it's not a bomb. It is capable of carrying nuclear warheads. So he is intentionally confusing the engines that are powering these with bombs. They're not bombs. No one other than North Korea has conducted tests of bombs in the last few years. So Mr. Trump is speaking on the basis of ignorance or propaganda value, not stating the reality. That the United States wants to restart testing has different reasons. One of them is it fears that its stockpile of nuclear weapons doesn't work, which is quite possible because it's quite old. The Russians have, in the last few years, completely modernized their nuclear arsenal. The United States has not. By the expert opinion of Russian arms scholars, the United States would have to invest between $1 and $2 trillion to renovate its nuclear weapons. And of course, testing is part of that process.
All right, sir. With that, I would like to thank you for taking out time and sharing your analysis with us on NewsX World. With that, viewers, we're shifting focus to more news coming in. We're now learning that U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has spoken with his Indian and Chinese counterparts, beginning a series of face-to-face meetings at the ASEAN Defense Summit in Malaysia. Hegseth has stated that he has told Chinese Defense Minister Dong Jun that the United States would stoutly defend its interests and maintain the balance of power in the Indo-Pacific. Hegseth has also told Dong that the United States is concerned about China's activities in the disputed South China Sea and around Taiwan in particular. Meanwhile, he's also described their meeting as good and constructive. These remarks have come after Donald Trump had earlier stated that Taiwan did not come up in his meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping that had taken place on the sidelines of the APEC summit in South Korea. With us on the broadcast is Ms. Shruti Das Gupta, International Affairs expert, joining us from New Delhi. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX World. I'll be dissecting these developments piece by piece. First up, what's taken place between the meeting between Secretary Hegseth and his Chinese counterpart, Dong Jun. I want to understand from you Donald Trump has just wrapped up his key Asia tour. He was in Malaysia for the ASEAN summit first, then he headed to Tokyo for a bilateral with Sanai Takeichi, and then to South Korea for the APEC Leaders Summit, where he'd also met Lee Jae-myung, and of course the bilateral meeting that had taken place yesterday with Xi Jinping. The elephant in the room is, of course, China, the aggressive posture it has adopted in the Indo-Pacific. What do you make of this particular meeting, the sort of signal that Hegseth is now sending? Because, of course, Taiwan did not come up in the meeting between Xi Jinping and Donald Trump, but it has definitely come up in this particular interaction.
Greetings to you and your viewers, Pia. What I understand is that without having a conversation on Taiwan, there is no way any security guarantees or trade conversations can be held between USA and China. The fact that Trump did not mention it and now Pete Hegseth does, it shows that they knew that it would not be viewed very positively while mentioning it in front of Xi Jinping. And so they chose to do it at a lower level of the defense ministers. Well, he's not a defense minister, he is the director of war, Department of War. So they basically tried to posture it correctly by saying that we would be, we are aware of the activities that are happening, and they are silently signaling that Taiwan should not be made into an issue by China, or they will have a problem at their hands. Because Trump didn't mention it and only Hegseth did, it shows that they're aware that there is not much happening apart from posturing from both the nations. And they are pretty much okay with all posturing as long as it remains at that. Hegseth also kind of mentioned that they are completely aware of all the hydrographical spying as well as research ships that they keep sending around in the South China Sea and even extending towards the Indo-Pacific. By saying that they're doing the research but are actually spying on military installations of individual nations as well as US installations. So they've kind of hinted at all of that through this particular comment, that they will not they will always take care of their interests first. So they're putting China on the warning that we know what's happening. Please do not go forth, or else we will have to start taking more aggressive stance, both militarily and politically.
Mm-hmm. Indeed, and I also wanted to address what's taking place in South Asia and the larger interests that United States and China have. We've recently seen that Afghanistan and Pakistan have agreed to keep the ceasefire on hold till the next meeting that is now slated to take place in Istanbul on the 6th of November. We do know that United States is eyeing the Bagram air base. They're also eyeing at recovering the arms that they had left in Afghanistan during their abrupt withdrawal in 2021. China, of course, has its own interests as far as the BRI is concerned. It's keeping a close watch on what's taking place in Afghanistan through the Wakhan corridor. It has its own CPEC interests in Pakistan. Pakistan, of course, moving towards the Trump administration in the aftermath of Operation Sindoor. What do you think could have come up in this meeting with regards to that, and what, in your assessment, is the larger game plan that the two nations have as far as Afghanistan is concerned? Because we do know that Afghanistan is known as the graveyard of empires.
Well, it is the graveyard of empires, very rightly put by you, but as of now, I don't think there is much happening. Why China does not have, has not played any of its cards in that respect. And I don't think it became probably a bone of contention and even a bone of mention in these kind of conversations. What I do know is that within the last 24 hours, India was granted immunity from sanctions for the next 6 months for using Iran's Chabahar port to connect to Afghanistan. So US understands that India is important, one. The other part is Russia has offered military as well as political help to Afghanistan in case there are foreign interests that are interfering in its internal politics. So Russia has taken on a larger stance in this particular conversation related to Afghanistan. China has decided to stay mum because the conflict happens to be with its all-weather friend Pakistan, and Pakistan is happily sitting in USA's lap. So they are, as of now, not commenting on it because the particular aggression is not in favor of China. and they would rather monitor the situation than show their cards and make any kind of cooperation evident on either sides.
All right, ma'am, I request you to stay on with us. We're tracking some other very crucial developments. We're now learning that